Peace. MC Shawn Love, and I'm back with episode 12 of Hip Hop Vinyl Reviews, and we're going to be doing the First Priority Music Family Basement Flavor LP from 1988 on Atlantic Records, distributed through First Priority Music. See, the thing is, a lot has been forgotten. Luckily for you, I've forgotten more than you've ever learned. Pay attention and look at some of these artists that we're talking about, maybe for the first time. Just because you heard of MC Lyte or you know the song Roughneck doesn't mean you understand what was going down with First Priority Music or MC Lyte or what her career really meant to hip-hop music. You know, just because you heard Milk is Chillin', the Milk and Giz joint, doesn't mean you know about the Audio 2 or you've ever even heard really of King of Chill. And these are all names and these are all artists that are important we don't forget about. You know, just because, you know, it's just like, you know, the world, the universe is chaos. You know, I don't know why, why MC Brains came out with a more major release than Soul Shock or Mishi Me. I don't know why things turn out the way they do, but I know that very few people nowadays even pay attention to times like labels like Cold Chillin' and crews like the Juice Crew were really running shit and setting up the building blocks for hip-hop music. So if you don't know Cold Chillin', you're not going to know First Priority, and I think that's a goddamn shame, and I think we should talk about them. This record, Basement Flavor, not super easy to find. You know, it's one amongst a lot of records that got released by First Priority in 1988, which was a big year for them. If you want to know what First Priority was, it was a label that was started by a guy named Nat Robinson, and he was the father of, and that tells you a lot. You know, it tells you a lot about how this all went down. Nat Robinson was the father of Milk D, which is half of the two Milk and Giz from the group Audio 2. Most famous for that single everybody's heard, Milk is Chillin'. You know, Gizmo's Chillin', what more can I say? Top billin'. You know, everybody knows the joint. Even young heads have probably heard it. You know, and what's really famous about that, besides Milk's unique voice and the catchiness, is the fucking beat, man. They took Impeach the President, and you know, goonch, 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 chet, doon, 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 chet. You know, they used the shit out of that break, and they chopped it up. One of the first times, back when people were just looping shit, these guys actually chopped up that break, and they did something funky with it. I know it was funky because years later, people are still using that sample of what they did with that break beat, which is not a rare break by any means. You know, so think back to like Real Love with Mary J. Blige and Puffy. He just straight up took the Milk D, goonch, 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 cat, goonch, 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 cat. You know, and it was some clever shit. And as far as I know, that was the first record released on Priority Music, 1987, you know, Audio 2. And so by 88, you see, you know, that this is like not just Audio 2, but it's a whole family of artists. And some of them, you know, you might be familiar with, but, you know, you might know their name, but that's not enough, man. You guys see what these guys did and what they contributed to hip-hop. If you want to tout yourself around as somebody who knows true school hip-hop or knows their shit, you know what I mean? You can say it all day. When somebody grabs you by the collar and asks you what's today's mathematics, I want you to be able to say, I know what Positive K did for hip-hop. I know what he's famous for. I know what MC Lyte means to this culture and this music. I don't know who King of Chill is. That's a mistake. You should know King of Chill. And not just for his work that he did in the early, mid to late 80s, but the stuff that he's done presently. You know, King of Chill never stopped working. So if you Google him and look at what his contributions production-wise are to artists, I think you're going to be real surprised at what he's had his hands in over the years, all the way up to the present day. So anyway, King of Chill started out, and he was doing beats obviously on beat machines. I don't know which ones, and he was also using keyboards and arranging that stuff. And this is a time period when sampling really started taking hold. So rap producers were still feeling their way around in the dark, you know what I mean? Because sampling was a relatively new art form. There were rumors about, you know, potential legal issues if you sampled something. That wasn't totally clear yet, as you'd find out later in the following years when there were lawsuits because of samples. And the machines, you know, like that SP1200 I got back there, that was a mega beast. That had 10 seconds. A lot of the early sampling machines had 1.5 seconds, 5 seconds, like the SP12 Turbo. You know, you're dealing with stuff where you have to create music with very, very little tools and very, very, very little space to fuck up. And so these guys are legendary for using what little they had and making something funky out of it. You know, you had to find something that was a couple of seconds of it was going to be able to last you 3 minutes of a record. And you had to find the other stuff to either scratch in and blend other sounds with it. It was a complicated and very, very joyful art at the time. And it definitely was inspiring creativity with all those limitations. The album opens up with a song by Alliance, and that's called Get On Down. Now we're talking tight production, tight production, professionally done. Clean mixes, dope MCs that are serviceable, you know? These guys don't knock you dead with punchlines that maybe Big Daddy Kane was doing back at the same time, but they're very, very good, and the track is done in a very clean, precise, professional way. Think about Digging in the Crates. Think of DITC and the kind of work ethic that they put in to make their shit sound clean and professional. Same kind of vibe here, but done with even less because there's less sample time. So, you know, clean, banging. They have to put a lot of thought into how those drum patterns are really, really playing out and what they can do with the little bit of space that they have. And you know, it's banging. And that's those kind of happy accidents are what makes drum patterns like the one on Milk is Chillin' that's so famous. Second track on the album is by Audio 2. It's called Many Styles, and it, you know, it uses the Freddy's Dead sample by Curtis Mayfield, which everybody's used to death. So in retrospect, going back and listening to this, it's not that impressive. And the reason is because we've all heard Freddy's Dead a dozen times since that. With the Freddy's Dead sample, you know, aside, you know, Audio 2 is still, you know, wrecking shop and doing a good job here. It's a professional track, but it doesn't have the same explosive nature to it that, you know, Milk is Chillin' or I Don't Care or, you know, Get Your Mother Off the Crack. Any of the shit that he was doing back in the day that really, really opened your eyes like, oh shit, you know, it doesn't really have that flavor to it. The next track's a Positive K song featuring MC Lyte called I'm Not Having It. I'm Not Having It. And there's a video for this one. You know, it was one of the first dope appearances by MC Lyte after her first album, you know, Light as a Rock, you know, which was considered by a lot of people to be a classic hip-hop album right up there with Great Adventures of Slick Rick. You know, MC Lyte, Positive K, they kind of an interplay with this, and it's very similar. It almost sounds like the same song you did a couple of years later, I Got a Man, because you're going back and forth, you know, I'm not having it, and I just want to do this kicking game, and MC Lyte's dissing him, and it's very similar to I Got a Man, which was so successful of a single later on. You know, and it shows us that MC Lyte has got a great balance as a female artist, and I'll talk a little bit more about her later, you know, where she's not over-sexualized, where, you know, but at the same time, she's still feminine, and that plays really well here. You know, she disses him every time he comes up to her. You know, if you even had thoughts of taking me to bed, kill that and get yourself a $5 crackhead or a $10 crackhead. And, you know, that shit's, you know, back in the day, that was explosive on Yo MTV Raps playing in the morning, on a Saturday morning, talking about get yourself a $10 crackhead or a $5 crackhead. Is it $10? No. The $10 crackhead was Schoolie D, or the $10 whore was Schoolie D. Okay, never mind. $5 crackhead is MC Lyte. MC Lyte's not a $5 crack. The one MC Lyte was referring to in her song, next joint is Mishi Me, LA Love, and featuring MC Lyte. Victory is Calling, and it's, you know, it's got a funky little sample. You can kind of hear the James Brown loops, like, you know, kind of like downplayed in the track. And you can almost hear the loops not connecting completely because they just didn't have enough goddamn sample time, which is great, but it still bangs. Mishi Me's a real talented chick out of Toronto. I believe later on she actually had an album, and I think I want to say 90 something, and then she had one out again in 2000, you know, 2 albums, and then she's gone on to do some television and film performances as well. Definitely a capable MC. She shines here, and you know, her and MC Lyte have a real good counterbalance where they both sound like strong MCs on the track. Then we get the Megaton bomb of the album, which I believe is the strongest track, and it's MC Lyte's Survival of the Fittest. It's later released and remixed on her Eyes on This album. Came out the same year later on. Now, the whole deal with MC Lyte here is, I got to tell you this, and I want you to believe me when I tell you this, but I'd much rather you go look it up for yourself. MC Lyte is absolutely, positively, in my book, the GOAT, the greatest of all time when it comes to female MCs. And I don't believe that she's like, you know, is it her or is it Lauryn Hill? Is it her or is it Bahama D? I believe it's like MC Lyte, and the other ones are, you know, Lauryn Hill, and then, you know, Bahamadia, and you got a couple other babes down here, you know, did one album or some shit like that, you know. But I'm talking MC Lyte towers above other female MCs, and she always has. She's had the voice, she's had the no-nonsense delivery, she's got like sass in her stuff with a very feminine vibe. At the same time, she still doesn't have to, you don't see a gaping hole with her. With, you know, hip-hop is about, you know, to some degree, black masculinity, okay? So look at artists like everybody from 50 Cent to Big Daddy Kane, and that's why, you know, a lot of artists get criticized for being so feminine, these fucking new guys with their goddamn makeup and dresses and stuff, is because hip-hop is about about, to a certain degree, black masculinity. And so when your black masculinity is coming from an artist who, isn't interested in sex and wears dresses and skirts and booties and shit like that, hip-hop implodes and it ceases to exist as a real thing anymore. But if it's about black masculinity, where does MC Lyte fit into the equation? Well, she's got the perfect balance of not overly sexualized, but sexy. She's soft where she needs to be and shows a little vulnerability with her lyrics and insecurities, but she's also confident and strong as hell. I mean, can you imagine what it was like me being like a 10 or 11 or 12-year-old when these albums were coming out? That helped shape and form my idea of black womanhood. So you couldn't tell me by looking at this fucking, bullshit on TV, these sitcoms and this and that and the other that make black women look like loud court jesters. MC Lyte was a strong, intelligent black woman that served as a model in my young mind. And, so she did a great service as a celebrity because she's always been fairly responsible in terms of how she does her music. So when Survival of the Fittest comes on, it just kind of steals the show. Her tight-ass flow, her delivery, and the cleverness of the lines are just, they're for the first time in this album, it's like, okay, now we're talking. He says, I have no time for things that are trivial, like who will dance with me if I can't dance? I'm not a dancer. That's what leg 1 and 2 are for. I master the rhyme because that's what I get paid for. So she's shown that feminine side of herself. I don't get bothered with trivial things like who's gonna dance with me if I can't dance? I'm not a dancer. That's what my fucking dancers are for. I mastered the rhyme. That's what I get paid for. So she's showing you, that she connects in some way to that feminine sensitivity, but at the same time she's above all that fucking bullshit. And that attitude was something that a lot of hip-hop listeners were attracted to, because you didn't have to feel like a goddamn vagina, a bleeding vagina when you're driving in your car listening to MC Lyte, because she was tough as hell. But at the same time, she wasn't like lesbo tough as hell. Confident and convincing. I mean, this is one of the records where some of her most famous scratches and samples come from, like the extra, read all about it. It's about MC Lyte, the boy shouted. So there were some of her standing, shining moments that other hip-hop artists and she has gone on to use for choruses and stuff. It comes from this record. She says, oopsie daisy, I should be more modest, but what can I tell you? I was brought up to be honest. Keep your eyes on the solar system and keep looking, cause up on the rise is the planet Brooklyn. It was just, you gotta imagine a tough ass chick coming out and saying some shit like that back in the late 80s when we didn't know whether or not girls were even supposed to really rhyme, because the ones that had been out there had been so disappointing, with the exception of a few. She says, you could compare me to crackers and cheese, but don't compare me to a sucker MC, cause crackers and cheese, now that shit is good, but sucker MCs ain't as good as they should be. MC Lyte was fucking brilliant. At the time she came out, and she kept going, and she's got 8 albums. She comes out and originates from this First Priority Music, but MC Lyte went on to be a big star, and now deep into her 40s, she's aged like fine wine. She's still gorgeous. In fact, it seems like she's prettier now than she was when she was 20 years old. We'll go a little bit more into why I think MC Lyte is the greatest of all time, hands down, when it comes to female rappers. Sometime in the future, when we review my favorite album of hers, Eyes on This, and it's got Cha Cha Cha, Survival of the Fittest remix, Slave to the Rhythm, Not With a Dealer. It's got some crazy shit, Cappuccino. It seems like everything on here could have been a single. It's a classic hip-hop album. It's something we're going to talk about sometime soon. What can I say? I mean, the next song is by Positive K. Another all-time great. He had his own album out later, but the thing is back in the late 80s, you see him on a lot of collaborations with other artists and singles. Pretty much his whole solo discography starts and ends in 1992. He never went on to do a sophomore album that I'm aware of. I know he's got some new music out now, and I like it. I like it. It's got Greg Nice on it. It's fresh. I cop anything. Any of these guys still working, you count on me to buy your shit, So anyway, Tramp is about loose women. Sample Tramp was used later, Salt and Pepper, blah, blah, blah. Or was that first? Audio 2 comes in later, right after this, and they got a track called Peer Pressure, which I got to be honest with you, I did not like. And it sounded lazy as hell to me. And maybe you can go back, and I like Audio 2, and I like Milk D, and but the thing is, you go back and listen to it, it sounds like he just kind of phoned it in, freestyled the damn thing, which is really ironic, because it was Milk's father, Nat Robinson, who made all this possible. He was like the financier of the first couple of records, and probably a lot later on too. I know that this was taken over by another label, I think in 2010, or another president. But yeah, first priority was Nat's thing, and Nat was, the son of Nat was Milk. So for him to kind of phone it in on something on a project like this is disappointing, because if you play his verse next to MC Lyte's, like MC Lyte bodies him on his own shit. He's a dick riding faggot. He loves the attention. I'm sorry, I know that Milk's not a faggot. I'm just joking. I respect and like Milk. Track 8, Mishimi is back of LA Love, and she's chanting on this one too, which sounds ill. It's only 88, so that's before that shit really took a firm hold on hip hop, and everybody and their grandmother was chanting, you know what I mean, and everybody was Shabba Ranks and was secretly Jamaican and all this. A lot of that was going on later in the 90s. But yeah, this is early on, and she's some chick from Toronto, like chanting. The beat's got a strong ass snare and kick, a short sample. It's hip hop, man. I mean, stripped down hip hop. And sometimes you wonder, like, oh, hip hop's evolved since then. But there's a lot of different origin points for things. And the reason why it's important to go back to these origin points, because sometimes a shit evolves into a shitty direction, and if you go back to the origin point, maybe you could take it into the present, but you could take it into a direction that's fresher than some of the other places it went. Study nature, guys. Track 9, Kibbles and Bits by Alliance. Just funky as hell. Dope ass sample, dope ass drums. There's not much else to say about this than go listen to the song Kibbles and Bits by Alliance. Another great track that you're not going to hear about if you're only remotely familiar with the 80s shit. Not all this stuff is children's story in Run's house. You know what I mean? It's important to listen to these records too. Track 10, Positive K is back with Barsha, another dope joint. Just trading battle verses. Positive K always on some clever shit. And Barsha, with his shit like, I write the rhymes that he said, I invent the rhymes that the crowd gets excited for. I grab the mic, play the mighty Thor. It's that old school shit, but we're taking it a little bit above. This isn't all the way back like Lime to a Lemon shit. This isn't, my name is Zen, I came to say. This is some other shit. Positive K. These guys are part of that second or third generation of hip-hop that was really getting clever with their delivery. And as I listen to these Positive K verses, which are ill, it reminds me of Positive K even later. Like he kept a stronghold on his style. And that brings me up to another point. Him and MC Lyte, Milk D, a lot of these guys from this First Priority Music family sound a little bit similar. And I'm not saying they're biting one another, but you could tell that they were developing together. They sound like a family. They don't sound like they're disconnected artists that an A&R put in the same room and tried to mesh together. They sound like they were probably eating together and drinking together. And in a lot of ways, they come off as a very youthful and positive group of artists. The album ends with Soul Shock, Break the Limits, which to me is like a defining moment in the record. And not in a way that I like, and I can understand why other people liked it at the time. You gotta understand the evolution of hip-hop. When you were looking at the late 80s, mid to late 80s, this was a period of transition. And when an art form is young, like let's just say hip-hop really started, in 1931 when blankety blank, I always try to credit, because a lot of people got a lot of different outlooks and perspectives. I always think hip-hop started, really started forming into something solid when I look back around 75 to 77. And that's based on what I've heard and what I've read and what I've experienced as a youngster. So if this is 88, you're only around 10 years into hip-hop. So it's going through a transitional phase. So hip-hop sounded a whole lot different in 1979 to 81 than it did in 87 to 88, and it sounded a lot different in 83 than it did in 86, because things were growing so quickly that shit got old real fast, right? And so this Soul Shock is kind of an example of something that almost has that disco vibe, dance record thing, and everybody, even the hardest fucking artists back then, had a goddamn dance record on their LP. So when you had some gangster shit, go look up these things like EPMD, you look for their dance record, man. Everybody had a dance record on their album, and it always seemed just like a slap in the face if most of the time their MO was on some hard shit or some battle shit or some skill shit, and then they come in with some Love Is the Message sample and it's like a dance song. This is kind of like that. This is that dance song, and you can tell that this kind of belongs in a slightly earlier era. Now, it's no big deal in 2016, 2017 if you sound a little bit like 2015, right? Because it's not that old. But back then, if you were 88 and you sounded 86, you were a fucking dinosaur, you know? And that's kind of what this sounds like. The artists in First Priority had very, very different destinies after this. You know, I mean, this is an early record for all of their careers. And later on, you'd see Positive K to become well-known and do his own solo album and continue being a presence in hip-hop. You would see him working with a lot of other stars. You'd see MC Lyte, you know, really carve out a niche for herself. Her third album, I believe, had a track on it that went gold, the first female to ever go gold. And then she went on to do album after album. She took a long break, and she came back in 2015 with an album called Legend that she released at limited edition vinyls on Record Store Day. And I always see her out doing, you know, community-related work. You know, when I go on the internet and I see what Lyte's doing, it always seems like she's got her hands in something positive, and she's just still a gorgeous woman. You know, when you're looking at people like Audio 2, you don't see much after that. They had 2 albums, and then after that, their third album, I believe, got canceled. It was something about a dead cowboy. I'm not making this up. You know, it's canceled. And then Milk D, last time, you know, he comes out as in '94 as a solo artist with an album called Never Dated. And if I remember correctly, it's got a carton of milk on the cover of it. So, you know, King of Chill, like I said, he worked before First Priority, and he's been working up to date, you know, or up at least until recent years that I know of. And a lot of these other artists, you know, they went on to have their own respective albums like Alliance. So, you know, this is an origin point in hip-hop that a lot of people don't go back and look at and celebrate, and I think that that's a mistake. So check out First Priority Music, Basement Flavor. I'm out of here, guys. If you want to send me a vinyl, I'll review it. I'm already anticipating 3 or 4 in the mail, and I still got a few more on my roster. Let me know what you want to review, and if I don't got it, send it to me in the mail. All right, y'all, keep digging into hip hop. Peace.